Hi everyone, I'm Carlika Spann, the host of Anchor of Hope right here at Spero Family Services. Today we have two very special guests with us. One is our very own Becca Chavez from Spero Family Services, and we have another awesome guest that I cannot wait to chat with. Her name is Stephanie Bowdler, and she is joining us from One Hope United. So before we get started, I'm going to have these two ladies please introduce yourself and just share your title and a little bit about what you do.
Sure. My name is Becca, and I work at Spero Family Services. I have been here for 7.5 years. And the last few years, I've been in a leadership role, and I'm currently the manager of our counseling center. And I also am a therapist and primarily work with kids.
Stephanie?
My name is Stephanie, and I work for One Hope United in Centralia, their residential facility. I've been there 18 years next month, and I've done a little bit of everything. I started off as a youth care worker there, was a home supervisor for a while, then did admissions and intake. Then I actually went back to school and got my master's starting in 2018. So I have my master's in counseling as well. And then I was a therapist for a while on campus, and now my title is the assistant director of programs.
Okay, wow. Look at you.
Yeah.
And 18 years, oh my God.
18 years.
Yes. Thank you both for joining me. The holiday seasons are right around the corner, y'all. And so that means things get crazy. They get very busy. And Merry Mindfulness is the topic of discussion today. Self-care does seem to fall by the wayside. I know that personally. I'm sure you guys can attest to that yourselves. So I kind of want to dive into some practical self-care strategies, first of all, because Thanksgiving will be here before we know it. And then if we blink, then it's going to be Christmas. And so I know a lot of people with the hustle and bustle can be overwhelmed. There's anxiety and just all of the things. So let's just start with some basic self-care practices that you would see helpful for maybe people to create boundaries for themselves during the holiday season.
Yeah, I think creating boundaries is a self-care practice. And I think we're gonna talk about that more, but I think a lot of times people think self-care needs to be, going to a spa or spending a lot of money. And really it can just be about taking a few moments each day, journaling, doing some things that make you feel happy, and it doesn't have to be anything expensive.
Okay. I like that, because some people think that it does.
Right.
Or that it has to cost money, period.
Right.
And it really doesn't.
Sure.
Stephanie, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think boundaries, I think kind of like I said, like everybody thinks that that's like, is a taboo topic almost, but I think creating healthy boundaries, not just for yourself during the holiday season, but for your family during the holiday season is very important. So if you're kind of having those conversations with family and friends about like what your plans are and what you're going to be doing during the holidays, and kind of creating those spaces around that time. So that way they know kind of what you have going on, and this may be a private time reserved for me and my family, or this might be a time that I'm taking for me to do, A, B, and C, whether, again, sometimes we get caught up on mindfulness and thinking going to the spa or, hour-long massages, but sometimes it's just taking a time out during the busy season and going for a walk or journaling or, turning off the light in your office or at home and just breathing for 15 minutes, just kind of recenter yourself and create that boundary so that way you can tackle the next topic at hand.
Yes. I love that answer, actually, because it's a perfect segue to really just diving into the holiday season and focusing more on self-compassion and like the role it actually plays in self-care. Like, what role would you say self-compassion, having it for yourself, or anyone that's watching, having it for themselves, and self-care during the holiday season specifically?
I would just say that going back to the boundaries, and having boundaries for your energy and your time, resting, I think, is really important. And I think that a lot of times people put that like
last.
I'm going to do that last, yes, or we just completely exhaust ourselves and then it's not fun anymore. So I think really just focusing on yourself and what your family needs, and also I think being flexible with the holidays is important.
Okay.
And kind of just taking care of yourself because things are going to change. And I think it's important to know that like you can say no, or you can change your mind, or you can change your schedule if you need to.
Yeah.
And really just focus on yourself.
I have to constantly remind myself how no is a complete sentence.
Yes.
You know, and you don't have to add any explanations behind it. And
Right.
it's a struggle for many people though.
Yes.
So I can relate.
Yeah.
You want to add anything to that?
Well, that's what I was going to say, kind of to segue perfectly with both of you, is that sometimes it's okay not to do the things.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, again, you can fill your schedule up with something every night if you wanted to, but sometimes just saying no and having that boundary and preserving that for a restful night or, you know, for some downtime is okay to do. And then I think, you know, we're living in a world and a society where, right, social media's in our faces all the time.
Every day.
Everything that everybody has or doing or want is in our faces. And we all forget sometimes that what we see is not what always is happening. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And so nobody's posting a picture of the day that they're, you know, I mean, they might, but the turkey falls on the floor and
Right.
you've got to order pizza because you know, supper's ruined, or the Christmas tree goes up in flames. You know what I mean? Like those moments happen, and that's life. None of us live in catalog. None of us live, you know, in a picture perfect world. And it's okay to give yourself grace, to laugh it off and move on. Some of my best holiday memories are when things went wrong. You know what I mean? And you had to compromise and be flexible and figure out something on the fly.
Yeah.
And those are some of my best memories. You know what I mean? Can't remember what was in all of the Christmas boxes. I can't remember, you know, what we all served for Thanksgiving last year. The times that we're all together and making memories and, you know, doing those kind of things is, you know, the times that I remember. And remember that that's okay. It's not about the things. It's not about doing. It's about being, you know, with people that you love and that you surround yourself with.
I like that. It's true though, those mishaps can make some of the most memorable moments. For me, I know because I can think of two right now off the top of my head. That, you know, in the heat of the moment, you're like, oh my gosh, but then you laugh about it and you move on and you make memories off of those mishaps.
And those are the stories that you're telling everybody else next year. That this, you should have been here last year for this.
Because this happened, or I like that. I appreciate you adding that. I do want to make sure we capture as much as I possibly can without leaving any stone unturned. So I want to take just a quick detour to talk about loneliness and isolation because we've used the word family already probably 50 times.
Right.
So on the flip side of that, there is a lot of loneliness happening as well as isolation. People just dealing with things and seemingly so, you know, as they're dealing with them by themselves. So for people who feel lonely during the holidays or are kind of isolating themselves possibly for different reasons, what self-care practices would you recommend for them?
I can start this one.
Yeah, sure.
So I think it's important, kind of, we just talked about giving yourself grace and that self-compassion and reaching out. Because again, you might not be the type of person who wants to go to the big holiday party or the big gathering, you know what I mean? So calling a friend, calling, you know, a family member, calling a trusted person to say, hey, you want to go out for a merry cocktail, or you want to go out for, you know what I mean, coffee, and just kind of talk. And then I think, you know, people forget that the holidays can be some of the loneliest times. I know personally for me, like December is kind of a time of loss for me. I feel my body start to change as December rolls around.
Understood.
Because I lost, you know, two very important people to me in the month of December. And so I have the tendency to kind of draw in as well.
Okay.
And just reaching out to the people that know that and understand that and say, hey, you know, I need a moment, but then I'll be ready to join the party, or, you know, those kind of things. But I think it's also, you know, a great time to give back. So whether it's a community outreach program, whether it's a local, you know, church that's serving dinner, or a homeless shelter that's serving dinner, I think some of those times that we can use those to remember how fortunate we really are. And then you can, you know, be contributing and doing something, but then you can also just kind of scoot out when you're ready to scoot out. But it's kind of that sense of giving back and being a part of something that can make the holidays a little bit, you know, more worthwhile. But also if you're the type of person who don't do crowds, or if you're an introvert, don't force yourself to be an extrovert, because it's just going to be harder on yourself. So again, communication, I am a, you know, waving the flag of communication, talk to people, reach out to people, join a support group online, join, services online, whatever that you need to do to kind of feel connected, but be on your own also. Don't have any shame in your game about what you're doing.
Okay. Something that sticks out, and a light bulb just went off in my head when you said it twice, was when you're ready.
Mm-hmm.
That resonates with me so heavily. So I think that's a huge part of it. Not having to feel forced, to move, but when you're ready during the holiday season, and it still works when you're ready to show up, when you're ready to be a part. So thank you for that, Becca.
I was just going to add, in regards to loneliness, there's a lot of grief that people can feel, and I think our society tries to push people along and get over your grief, and so I have lost somebody recently too, and that has been a difficult, navigating the holidays has been difficult. But I think also if you could maybe find some way to honor those people, and maybe watch their favorite Christmas movie, or do some kind of tradition that would be meaningful. And the other thing I was going to say was I have several siblings, and 3 of them live out of the country.
Okay.
And so the holidays can be just sad and kind of lonely at times, and you miss those traditions from when you were growing up. But we do a lot of with technology, a lot of Zooms and FaceTimes and stuff like that, and
which is helpful.
Yes, I think that's helpful. It doesn't have to look like we're sitting down and having a meal together. We can hop on FaceTime and do whatever. So I think that is helpful technology.
Absolutely. I also think that it's important for us to remember and share that things don't have to be traditional.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to be. What are your thoughts about that? Just kind of creating things that are non-traditional, or things that are what others may expect during that time. Just showing up in a non-traditional way, if that's what's more comfortable for you during that time.
I think that's very important too, because again, I have a very big family. I'm the baby of 7. And so for many years, everybody felt like we needed to get each other gifts. You know what I mean? Buy something, have something for everybody to unwrap. And then we kind of sat around and took stock and was like, we don't need all of this.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so then instead of doing gifts, for each other, we picked somebody, and we did, as a family, either, saved up money and donated it, anonymously to this person or to this organization, or something like that. So we all felt like we were contributing something, but then, we were giving at the same time. You know what I mean? We weren't cluttering each other's houses up with junk, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Or again, we also used to get in the habit of everybody would be slaving over certain pieces of the meal either. And then we were like, what are we doing this? Because again, this is supposed to be a time of kind of rest and relaxation. Right. So then the last couple of years as well, we've thrown in money and just ordered Joe's, a tray of pizza or pasta. Or we had, I think, El Rancherito, maybe they can be our sponsor. For
El Ranch, we need you.
We had them cater one of our last meals around the holidays. So again, I think we're always striving to do more and get more, but then sometimes just realizing we don't have to work that hard.
Exactly.
We can break tradition and do something different. You know what I mean? But I think it's very important in finding out what each family and which family group, your chosen family, kind of wants to do to honor traditions and people. You know what I mean? And celebrate on their own, I think is a beautiful thing.
I like that. So you've already given us a few creative ideas that you can incorporate into the holiday season and traditions. Do you have one or any that you want to share? Just creative ideas?
I think for me, so having young kids has changed the holiday season for me. As we mentioned, there is a lot of pressure, and social media makes unrealistic expectations.
Definitely.
And I'm not moving an elf every day, things like that. So I think that creating my family's and my children's, what they want to do, we kind of make a bucket list. And so we'll all pick a couple of things that we really want to do. So we may not get to, X, Y, and Z, but we're going to try to do these 3 things. And so I think maybe just kind of really just doing your own thing. And each year it might change, as we said, be flexible.
Yes.
and just know that if you're having fun, then hopefully it's a good thing.
A lot of what we're saying and have already chatted about kind of revolves around stress. It revolves around stress with time management, food, mishaps happening. We've talked about so many things that actually go right back to stress. If you think about it, why do you think the holiday season can be like so stressful for so many people? Why is it hard for us to just sit back and relax? Like, why is stress such a thing during that time?
I think, as we mentioned, the social media and placing unrealistic expectations is usually where my source of stress comes from. Also, just being exhausted, I'll kind of run myself down and then I end up getting sick, and so I think it's just one of those things where it is a lot of pressure.
Okay. You feel the same when it happens?
Yeah, I think that has a lot to do with it. And then I think it's worse for us women than sometimes the men. Sometimes, you see the men, they just get their, bellies full of food and they sit back and watch, football or a movie or whatever. You're just like, now I've got to clean up. Now I've got to do A, B, and C. So I think sometimes as a woman and that caregiving nature, we want to make sure everything's well taken care of. And so I think sometimes to just sit back and, think the dishes will get done. You know what I mean? Like, they don't have to be done right this moment. Or again, maybe everybody needs, a couple hours after a meal or the celebration or whatever. And then let's do dishes as a family. Or, you know what I mean? Like, kind of realizing you're not in it alone a lot of times, you know what I mean? And you can clean up later, or you can do the dishes later. Or, you know what I mean? Just giving yourself that grace, that you're not in competition with anybody, you know what I mean? And again, if you go to bed with dishes still in the sink, it's not the end of the world.
Exactly.
And there's a good chance 75% of the rest of the world is going to bed with dishes dirty in their sink.
Will Santa still come?
Yes, Santa will come.
That's right.
Maybe Santa will do the dishes.
Yeah.
I'll put that on the list.
Yeah.
So kind of just, again, I think sometimes that's a lot to do with personality too, just to laugh it off, you know what I mean? Like, and take a deep breath. Mindfulness is a lot about recentering yourself,
Agreed.
and taking deep breaths. So you to take a deep breath and say, the dishes can wait.
Okay.
That pile of wrapping paper can wait. Worrying about next week's New Year's Eve plans can wait. Right here, right now, I'm going to take a deep breath, and I'm going to be in this moment, and I'm going to enjoy this moment. And tomorrow or this evening can worry about itself.
Exactly. Sometimes you just gotta pause.
Mm-hmm.
You just gotta pause.
Pause
catch
and
yourself,
reflect.
Regroup, reflect. That's an amazing word. I love that. I think it's important, and sometimes we miss it. And at the end of the day, like you said, you're worn out. And it's a little bit too late to take that pause or that breath throughout the day. We're talking about stress, and that goes hand in hand with these mental health challenges. We've talked about stress, there's grief, there's all of the things. And so instead of highlighting just one of them, because grief is something that we are going to highlight coming up, and I'm looking forward to doing that, let's just talk about the importance of recognizing them to begin with. What are your thoughts on that and the importance of actually recognizing those things? Mental health challenge, when you're overly anxious, stressed out. Let's talk about that. Being able to say, wait a minute, this is happening, or I see this. You know what I mean?
I think just recognizing it in your loved ones and then also in yourself and talking about it, because we've came a long way with mental health.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
Talking about it.
Talking about it, yes. So we've came a long way, but there is still a stigma, and
Very much so.
so it can be difficult to we have to feel like we put a face on, and really maybe we're hurting or we're stressed or whatever it might be. But I think it's important to recognize that, and if you see it in your loved one, to ask how you can help, and then also just recognize it in yourself.
Agreed. I think it has a lot to do with the fear that people have of being vulnerable.
Right.
You don't know how people are going to look at you if you say something that the world thinks is wrong.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So those are my thoughts as far as making sure that people know it's a safe space. Or having a safe space.
Right.
To kind of share what you're dealing with. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, another buzzword we've been hearing lately is emotional intelligence. So I think part of that is also, like Becca said, recognizing it in yourself, identifying it, and then naming it. Again, as a therapist, right? Like we always tell people, name the emotion. You know what I mean? Like somebody can say, I'm upset. Well, what does that mean? What is that emotion? Like let's name it. Let's figure it out. Because naming it kind of takes the bite away from it. And then we're talking about it. So again, and that's professionally and personally. Like at work, I'll tell, we've had a big time of transition. And there's been a lot of probably, a little bit more stress and pressure added. And there was a couple weeks ago where I felt like it was coming from all directions. And I had to tell my staff, I'm like, listen, guys, I'm feeling it. I'm overwhelmed. And this is me kind of waving my white flag to say, if I'm being short with you right now, it's not because I don't care. It's not because I don't want to hear, but I've got this list of things that I've got to take care of. So I need you to kind of all give me a pause.
Yes.
Let me take care of A, B, and C, and then I'll be right back to it. It's not, you know what I mean? And then, having people around you that will listen and then give you that space and respect that is very important. But then I think it also, opens that space or creates that safe space for them to identify the same. You know what I mean? So if I'm setting that example for my coworkers, for my friends, for my family, then they're able to kind of know that I'm a safe space for them to come identify those things as well and say, I'm feeling it this week. So I really need that kind of extra grace and support. And then we can be on the same page and, partnering with one another instead of sitting, in a corner wondering what the heck is that person's problem.
Right.
You know what I mean? You've kind of created that space and allowed them to just be, and that's okay.
I like that. Something else I think is important to add or just couple with that, especially for our listeners, is even when you get to the point where you can say, I need a second, or I need to step back, to be unapologetic about it. Like to really feel okay with your decision about needing some time for yourself. I know a lot of people who feel horrible when they ask, for time, or when they say, I need a second, then they feel bad for asking for what they need for themselves. So I think it's important to know that that's deserving. Wouldn't you guys agree?
Yes.
So Mary Mindfulness, that's the topic of discussion. When I say that, and when I use that phrase, what comes to your mind? What's the first thing that comes to your mind when I say that?
I was thinking of it as, in my mind, I want to go into the holiday season with a positive attitude.
Okay.
I want to be aware, of some of the important things we talked about, like boundaries and maybe taking a break from social media, and not putting so much pressure on myself.
Yeah.
And then incorporating some of those, the self-care and just things that can help me feel better.
Okay.
Yeah. So I feel like that's what it is.
Yeah.
What comes to your mind?
And I think along the same lines, definitely, I think for me, the concept of mindfulness, when it first kind of started floating around out there, I'm like, oh, I don't have time to, sit in a corner and, zen and be mindful for an hour. But really when I kind of changed my attitude about mindfulness and said that's really the opportunity for me to pause and be grateful about what I've had in my day, or what's to come in my day, kind of changed my attitude about mindfulness. So when we say Mary mindfulness, I think kind of being able to pause, be mindful in this moment, grateful for this moment, and then that is changing that attitude a little bit. So if I've even had a rough day, if my mindfulness, Mary mindfulness is to just pause and be like, okay, I've only got 2 hours left of my day. That's going to kind of change that attitude and look at it through a positive lens, and help me then be able to tackle things and be a little bit more, joyous or grateful or appreciative of the moment that I'm in, and that we're almost through with the day. And that,
Yes.
Sometimes that's what it takes to get through the day. But Mary mindfulness, I definitely think, the time to pause and prepare yourself to enter this holiday season, in a merry, joyous disposition.
Yeah, I agree. Having an attitude of gratitude is something I've really been working very hard on personally for myself, especially today. I just had to keep reminding myself, even though, things were happening and my plate felt full or I was overwhelmed with all the things that life throws at us, you kind of got to reel yourself in and look at the highlights sometimes. Or, well, I am thankful for this. or I do, appreciate that. Because, in the event that you get lost, and all of the overwhelm, anxiety, things like that, then you lose sight, of the important things and what really, really matters. So attitude of gratitude. I try to carry that with me everywhere that I go.
Yeah.
We've talked about so many awesome things. We talked about highs, lows, all the ebbs and flows of the holiday season. And just to be honest, it's easy for things to just get carried away for all of us. So in conclusion, what would you say is a takeaway for either one of you, whoever would like to just jump into it first, for our listeners to remember about self-care during the holidays? With the melting pot of things that we kind of just chit-chatted about, what would be like your main takeaway to share with our listeners?
I think that boundaries are very important.
I love that.
And that looks different for everybody. But I think that, one thing that we didn't mention was how difficult being around family can be sometimes.
Let's pause though. Let's talk about that real quick. Yeah, we have time.
Yeah,
Because that wasn't included, and I appreciate you adding that.
Yeah.
Let's chat about that real quick, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I think, along with the pressure and then social media and society, everyone thinks that we have a picture perfect family. And for a lot of people, that is not the case. And so, we have the election year and like some really hot topics, going on in the world. And then, just family stress or relationship issues. It can be really difficult. And I think that is something that is taboo also. And people don't always talk about maybe not seeing your family.
If that's what's healthy.
If that's what's healthy, yes.
Yeah.
So I think that's perfectly acceptable.
Yes.
So, those boundaries may look like maybe you are not going to be a part of that.
Yes, which goes right back to me saying, even if it's non-traditional, if it's healthy, if it supports your health and wellness, it's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
It's okay.
Or again, creating that boundary and saying, this is the time and space that I have for you.
Yes.
If it doesn't work for you, then we'll try again another year.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So that way you're making yourself available, and you're creating those boundaries around the space and the time. You know what I mean? And because again, I think sometimes, again, family guilt, right? Family of origin issues are real. And depending on family members and where, kind of that web has been created, we all, I think, sometimes have those insecurities and guilt that I have to offer something. And so if you do offer a time and a space and they can't meet that time and space, then you have made the effort. You know what I mean? And again, we all have the family members that we love in small doses. And so being mindful of that. And then even again, creating those buzzwords or communicating, to say to a spouse or a significant other, to say, okay, I think that turkey's burning at home, let's roll. And being able to communicate and create those boundaries around the people that are joy suckers, if you will.
Yes.
Because you don't, it's not worth it in the long run.
Yes.
Agreed. I love that though, because that boundary sometimes can be a little hard or challenging, but when it's time to go, it's time to go. Unapologetically.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's just talk about a little bit of encouragement for our listeners. What would be an encouraging piece from you and you as well, however you want to incorporate that to maybe leave our listeners with?
I think we talked about reflection and how important that is. And I think that's a really big piece of mindfulness. So my suggestion is to reflect on things that have made you happy in the past and around the holidays, or maybe something that your family really enjoyed, and make those things a priority, and worry less about, I guess, the pressure and all of the stuff.
Okay. Thank you.
I definitely think probably to say, find out what works for you, and kind of unapologetically do you, and find out what brings you joy. Because again, if you're bringing in joy, you're going to be, exuding joy to others. You know what I mean? And so bring in what you need to do to take care of you and make you happy, and then take the time to spread that happiness to everyone else that you come in contact with.
Agreed. So ultimately, I think that self-care is not selfish.
Right.
And if people just got that, I think we'd be able to navigate through so many situations much better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely not a selfish thing.
Yeah.
Especially when it allows you to show up being your best self for other people who are depending on you or need you, things like that. You guys were awesome. I definitely want to chat with y'all again if we can make it happen. So thank you again for joining us, especially during your busy schedules and the holiday season's upon us. I do appreciate you spending your time with me. I appreciate you coming to chat with us as well. Thank you guys for watching and tuning in. This has been an awesome episode. Definitely have another amazing one coming back up for you. Please keep in mind that you can find us on Spotify, YouTube, and also Apple Podcasts. Very excited about those 3 things. I hope that you guys can join us again soon.